In my hand was the key to a penthouse worth $1.2 million, my wedding present for my son. Then a text arrived from a stranger's number. "Stay away from your son's wedding. Get out now." I assumed it was some twisted prank and dialed back 17 times. Eventually, someone picked up, and what they revealed turned my blood to ice, leaving me just 9 days to save everything. Before I continue, hit that subscribe button right now. Smash the like so more people find this and comment where you're watching from. I read everyone. Quick note, this story uses creative elements for meaningful lessons. Any resemblance to real people or places is coincidental, but the message matters. I was holding the keys to a $1.2 million penthouse in Cherry Creek when my phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. The October afternoon light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the empty living room gold. From where I stood, Denver sprawled below the Front Range, rising beyond like ancient sentinels. Those peaks had watched me build my life here for 40 years. 40 years. God, where had the time gone? I walked through the space, slowly, footsteps echoing off hardwood floors. The kitchen gleamed with appliances Nathan would probably never use. The master bedroom opened onto a balcony overlooking Piedmont Park, where autumn had set the trees ablaze. Every detail was perfect. This wasn't just real estate. This was redemption. I'd bought this penthouse for my son, Nathan, 29 years old, getting married next Saturday, starting a family. $1.2 million might seem extravagant, but what's money compared to family? Compared to knowing your only child won't struggle the way you did, 1984. That's when I arrived in Denver with nothing but a high school diploma and hunger. Richard was with me. Then my husband, my partner. We started with a single duplex in Capitol Hill, fixed it up ourselves. Then another property, and another. 4 decades of early mornings and calculated risks. Richard never got to see what we built. He passed 8 years ago, 2 weeks after our anniversary. Some mornings I still reach for him across the bed. But he'd be proud of this moment. Our son getting married. And the baby Olivia was 2 months along. My first grandchild. Richard's grandchild, even though he'd never hold that precious soul. I pulled the closing documents from my portfolio and signed each page. The penthouse officially belonged to Nathan now. I'd surprise him with the keys at next Friday's rehearsal dinner. 9 days until the wedding. This gift was my apology for all those Little League games I'd missed, all those parent-teacher conferences I'd skipped for work. My promise that Nathan and Olivia would start their marriage on better footing than Richard and I ever had. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out expecting my contractor or maybe Lawrence, my attorney. Instead, an unknown number lit the screen. The message made my blood run cold. "Don't go to your son's wedding. Run." I stared at the words, read them twice, 3 times. Who would send something like this? Some sick joke. I pressed dial. The phone rang endlessly. No voicemail, just mechanical ringing that mocked me with each repetition. I tried again and again. By the 10th attempt, my hands were shaking. The rational part of my brain, the part that had negotiated million-dollar deals without flinching, insisted this was nothing. A prank. A wrong number. Maybe one of Nathan's friends with twisted bachelor party humor. But instinct whispered something darker. I gathered the documents, trying to focus. The penthouse was Nathan's now. Whatever that message meant, it wouldn't change my love for my son. I locked the door, the keys suddenly heavy in my palm. These were supposed to symbolize faith in Nathan's future. Now they felt weighted with something I couldn't name. In the parking garage, I checked over my shoulder 3 times. The concrete pillars cast long shadows. Everything looked normal. Everything felt wrong. I sat in my Mercedes engine off, staring at that message. "Don't go to your son's wedding. Run." My finger hovered over delete, then stopped. I saved the number, started the engine. Some unknown caller with a cryptic message wasn't going to ruin my son's big day. As I pulled into late afternoon traffic, I had no idea that in 9 days, I'd wish I'd listened to that warning. By the time the unknown number finally answered, I'd called 17 times. It was Thursday night, 11:47. I sat in my home office, the lamp casting long shadows across my desk, a glass of whiskey I couldn't bring myself to drink, sitting untouched beside the phone. Eleanor. The voice was rough-weighted with something between regret and urgency. I recognized it instantly, though I hadn't heard it in 8 years. William Sterling. My former business partner, the man I'd forced into rehab when his cocaine habit nearly destroyed both our companies. The man I'd cut ties with the day Nathan graduated college because my son had made it clear him or William. I'd chosen Nathan. "I'm sorry," William said. "I didn't want to do this over text, but I couldn't risk calling from my regular number. If they knew I'd warned you..." "If who knew William, what the hell is going on?" A pause. I heard traffic in the background, the distant wail of a siren. Tuesday morning. I was at Corvus Coffee in Cherry Creek. Your son walked in. My chest tightened. Nathan drinks coffee. That's not... He wasn't alone. William's voice hardened. A woman, and a man in a suit lawyer type expensive shoes, the kind that clicks on marble. They sat 3 tables from me. 40 minutes, Eleanor. I sat there for 40 minutes. William. The woman said, "The old lady doesn't even check documents anymore." Nathan laughed. Said, "These papers are airtight. No loopholes." The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of my desk. The lawyer, Andrew, somebody laid out the whole thing. They're liquidating everything, your entire portfolio. $62 million in properties selling to Summit Capital Group for $25. After the honeymoon, they move you into assisted living. They've already paid some doctor to sign off on incompetency papers. That's Nathan wouldn't... Eleanor. William's voice cracked. I was 6 feet away for 40 minutes. The woman talked about which facility had the best optics. Nathan asked when the money would clear. The lawyer said everything's ready to execute right after the wedding. 9 days from now. The wedding I'd been planning for 6 months. The penthouse I'd just signed over. The grandchild I'd been dreaming about. "You're wrong," I whispered. "You're William. You've been sober for, 6 years? Maybe you..." "Don't." His voice turned sharp. "Don't insult both of us. I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And I know you're in danger." Silence stretched between us. Through my office window, I could see the Denver skyline glittering against the dark mountains beyond. 40 years I'd built this empire. 40 years since I'd arrived here with nothing but Richard's life insurance and a dream. And my son, the boy I'd raised alone, the man I'd trusted with everything, was planning to take it all. "What did they have you sign?" William asked quietly. That's when it hit me. 3 weeks ago, Nathan standing in my kitchen with a leather folder. Just estate planning, Mom. Routine trust restructuring. For the baby's future. I'd signed while we discussed the wedding menu. "Eleanor, you still there?" I was staring at the graduation photo on my wall. Nathan in his cap and gown, arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning. 5 years ago. Back when I still believed I knew my son. "What had I signed?" I whispered. By Friday morning, I had torn through my home office like a woman unhinged. Filing cabinets gaped open, their contents scattered across the floor, decades of tax returns, property deeds, contracts, yellowed with age. My hands moved mechanically, folder after folder, searching for the answer to the question that had kept me awake all night. What had I signed? I found it in the bottom drawer tucked behind old insurance policies. A folder labeled Estate Planning 2024 in my own careful handwriting. I didn't remember creating this file. Inside was the leather portfolio Nathan had brought me 3 weeks ago. September 20th, a Tuesday afternoon. The memory came flooding back with painful clarity. Nathan had arrived just after lunch, all smiles and easy charm, carrying that portfolio under his arm. Olivia had stayed in the car, mourning sickness, he'd explained, making her too nauseous for the drive up from their apartment. "Just estate planning, Mom," he'd said, spreading documents across my kitchen table. "Routine trust restructuring, making sure everything's set up properly, for the baby's future." I'd been agonizing over the reception menu, salmon or steak, and trying to calculate how many out-of-town guests would need hotel blocks. My first grandchild, my son's wedding, the future I'd been dreaming about since Richard died. "Sign here, Mom, and here. Initial here." I'd signed while asking Nathan whether he thought Olivia's parents would prefer fish. He'd gathered the papers, kissed my cheek, and left whistling. Now alone in my office with dawn light creeping through the windows, I read what I'd actually put my name to: power of attorney. Effective immediately. Nathan Ross granted complete authority over all financial decisions, property transactions, and business operations. My vision blurred. There was more. A transfer agreement dense with legal language. All properties, every building I'd spent 40 years acquiring, moved into an entity called Ross Family, LLC. I grabbed my laptop, pulled up the Colorado Secretary of State's business registry, typed with shaking fingers. Ross Family, LLC, registered August 15th, 2024, managing member Nathan Ross. I scrolled through the filing 3 times searching for my name. It wasn't there. Not as owner, not as member, not as registered agent. Legally, I had no connection to my own company. The next document made my stomach drop. A preliminary sales agreement. Ross Family, LLC to Summit Capital Group. Purchase price $25 million. Property description: all 10 buildings comprising the Denver Metro portfolio formerly held by... I couldn't finish reading. Those properties were worth $62 million. I'd had them appraised 6 months ago for insurance purposes. Real estate in Denver had exploded. Rhino's warehouses converted to luxury lofts. Highlands Victorian homes restored and selling for millions. Cherry Creek's commercial spaces commanding premium rents. $62 million in assets. My son was selling them for $25. A $37 million loss. 60% of their value gone. And my signature was on every page dated September 20th, the day I'd been too distracted by wedding planning and grandchild dreams to read what I was signing. For the baby's future, he'd said. I stared at the laptop screen until the words blurred together. Outside Denver was waking joggers passing my window, early coffee runs, the ordinary Friday morning rhythm of a city that didn't know my world had just collapsed. I'd been so proud when Nathan said he wanted to learn the business. Proud that my son showed interest in real estate, in building something lasting, in carrying forward what Richard and I had created from nothing. He'd learned all right. He'd learned exactly how to steal everything I'd built. By Friday afternoon, I made the call that would unravel everything. Samuel Rodriguez answered on the second ring. I'd hired him twice before, once to vet a property manager, once to investigate a contractor I'd suspected of fraud. He was thorough, discreet, and expensive, worth every penny. Eleanor. Been a while. I need deep background checks on 2 people. I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Olivia Harper and a lawyer named Andrew Thornton. Everything you can find. Fast. A pause. How fast? Yesterday would be too late. Another pause. I could hear him typing the click of keys, rapid and efficient. This about your son's wedding. Of course he'd know. Samuel made it his business to know things. Yes. Give me 4 hours. I hung up and spent those 4 hours pacing my office like a caged animal. The documents from this morning lay spread across my desk. The power of attorney, the LLC transfer the sales agreement. Every page bore my signature, proof of my own blind trust. My eyes kept drifting to the framed photo on the bookshelf. Nathan and Olivia at their engagement party 6 months ago. She looked radiant in that picture, her hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach, Nathan's arm around her shoulders. They'd announced the pregnancy that night, and I'd cried happy tears into my champagne. For the baby's future. That's what Nathan had said. And I'd believed him. Because what kind of mother wouldn't? What kind of grandmother would suspect a pregnant woman of conspiracy? I kept circling back to that thought as the afternoon shadows lengthened across my office floor. Olivia was carrying my grandchild, Richard's grandchild, the first new generation of our family since Nathan himself was born. She'd been so sweet these past months, calling to ask about my recipes, showing me ultrasound photos, letting me feel the baby kick just last week. How could someone carrying my blood in her womb be part of this? Maybe she wasn't. Maybe Nathan had dragged her into something she didn't fully understand. Maybe he'd manipulated her the same way he'd manipulated me, with his easy charm and boyish smile. Maybe she was as much a victim as I was. I wanted desperately to believe that. I needed to believe it because the alternative that this young woman I'd welcomed into my family, this mother of my grandchild, had looked me in the eye and lied was too devastating to accept. The pregnancy changed everything. It had to. You didn't carry a child and plot to destroy that child's grandmother. You didn't feel life growing inside you and scheme to steal an old woman's legacy. Did you? I checked my phone for the 15th time. 3:47. Samuel said 4 hours. He'd called at 2:30, which meant the phone rang at 7:30. Samuel's name lit up the screen. I grabbed it so fast I nearly dropped it. Samuel. Eleanor. His voice was different now. Careful. The way you'd speak to someone standing on a ledge. I've got what you asked for, but you need to sit down for this. I was already sitting, but my hands gripped the armrests of my chair anyway. Tell me, I said. The silence on the other end lasted 3 heartbeats too long. When Samuel finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone delivering news that would change everything. The number Samuel read made my blood run cold. Olivia Harper, he began, and I could hear papers rustling on his end. Credit card debt $475,000. Maxed out across 7 cards in the last 18 months. I grabbed a pen, my hand shaking as I scribbled on the notepad beside me. $475,000. Spending pattern shows luxury goods, Gucci, Prada, Louis Vuitton. High-end restaurants, travel deposits for trips to the Maldives, Santorini, jewelry purchases at Tiffany's. This isn't someone living beyond their means. This is someone hemorrhaging money. And Nathan. Samuel's pause felt deliberate. Personal loans totaling $130,000. He's also leasing a Porsche Cayenne he can't afford $3,800 a month. The apartment in Highland $4,500 a month. He signed that lease in August. The same month Ross Family LLC was registered. They've been drowning for 18 months, Samuel continued. Both of them. Then suddenly, August 15th. Nathan creates this LLC. 2 weeks later, September 1st preliminary agreement with Summit Capital Group appears. Your signature goes on the transfer document September 20th. I did the math in my head. They'd planned this. Months of planning, while Olivia smiled at family dinners and Nathan talked about learning the business. Why sell so low? I heard myself ask. $62 million in assets for 25. That's desperation, Samuel said flatly. They need cash now, not fair market value. Summit Capital knows it. They're vultures circling a carcass. Probably figured out Nathan's in over his head and negotiated accordingly. I sat frozen in my chair staring at the numbers I'd written. My son, drowning in debt, stealing from his mother to save himself. But still some stubborn part of me searched for an explanation that didn't shatter me completely. Maybe Olivia pressured him, I said. The words sounded pathetic even as I spoke them. He's about to be a father. Maybe he panicked. Maybe he thought, Eleanor. Samuel's voice gentled. I know you want to believe. He's my son. My voice cracked. He's about to have a baby. People change when they become parents. They grow up. Maybe this is just... Maybe he made a mistake and once the baby comes... The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the line had dropped. Samuel. Eleanor. He exhaled slowly. There's one more thing. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. It was the same voice he'd used 3 years ago when he'd told me the contractor I'd trusted had been skimming for months. The voice of someone who didn't want to be the bearer of bad news but had no choice. What? I whispered. Another pause. This one felt like it lasted a lifetime. When Samuel finally spoke, each word landed like a hammer blow. I need you to understand something before I tell you this. What I'm about to say, it changes everything. Once you know, you can't unknow it. My fingers gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Through my office window, the Denver skyline glittered against the darkening mountains, oblivious to my collapsing world. "Tell me," I said. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. Olivia Harper's legal name until 2019 was Emma Thornton. The world stopped. She changed it in March 2019. Samuel continued. Complete identity overhaul, new name, new social media presence, new history, professional job, no red flags unless you dig deep. Thornton. Thornton. The name echoed in my head like a church bell, each repetition bringing a memory closer to the surface. "Andrew Thornton," I whispered. Her brother, Samuel, confirmed. "Want to hear the rest?" I couldn't speak. My mind was already spiraling backward 15 years into the past. Summer 2009. Andrew Thornton had been 25, fresh out of law school, eager and bright. I'd mentored him myself, saw potential in his sharp mind and ambition. He'd worked for me for 8 months, until I caught him falsifying property appraisals. He'd been making failing investments look viable on paper, setting up buyers for losses they'd never see coming until it was too late. When I'd confronted him in my office, he'd actually smiled. "It's just a small adjustment, Mrs. Ross. Everyone does it." "It's fraud," I'd said. "You're fired." But I hadn't stopped there. I'd reported him to the Colorado Real Estate Commission. Within 3 months, he was blacklisted at every major firm in Denver. His career was over before it began. I remembered his face at the door, the way he'd turned back to look at me. "You'll regret this, Mrs. Ross. Someday you'll regret this." I dismissed it as empty bravado from a bitter young man who'd destroyed his own future. "Eleanor." Samuel's voice pulled me back to the present. "You still there?" "I fired him," I said. 15 years ago. I destroyed his career. "I know. After you fired him, he never recovered. Small practice in Aurora, barely scraping by. Emma would have been 13, maybe 14 when you ruined her big brother's life." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. How did she meet Nathan? My voice sounded hollow. Papers rustled. "Denver Real Estate Summit, June 2021. The one you sent Nathan to for networking." I'd sent him. I'd pushed him to go to make connections to learn the business. Emma approached him at the cocktail reception. They were dating within a month. She's been playing the long game for 3 years. 3 years. Building trust, getting close to my family, getting pregnant or claiming to be pregnant to secure her position, all while her brother drafted the documents that would steal everything. 15 years they'd waited. 15 years of planning, watching, preparing, and I'd handed them the perfect weapon, my own son. "Is Nathan a victim or a willing participant?" I asked. Samuel's silence stretched too long. "His debt is real," he finally said. "The desperation is real. Whether Emma manipulated him into this or whether he jumped at the chance once she offered a solution that I can't tell you. But Eleanor, those documents, he signed his name as managing member of that LLC. He brought those papers to your kitchen. He watched you sign." My son had been hunted. That much was clear. But had he also become a willing hunter? Saturday evening, October 12th, I opened my door with a smile I didn't feel. Mom Nathan wrapped me in a hug that felt like betrayal wearing skin. Olivia Emma followed with wine and flowers, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. My supposedly pregnant future daughter-in-law. I hugged them both. Inside, I was screaming. "Dinner smells amazing," Nathan said, heading to the kitchen. "What are we having?" "Pot roast, your father's recipe." Invoking Richard's name felt like armor. I needed every shield I could find to get through this evening. Over dinner, they painted their perfect future. The honeymoon Maldives, 2 weeks overwater bungalow. "Sounds expensive," I said carefully. "We've been saving," Nathan said, reaching for Olivia's hand. "Saving, while drowning in $605,000 of debt." Olivia touched her stomach with practiced tenderness. "The baby's been so active today, I swear I felt 3 kicks during the drive over." I smiled, nodded, asked about nursery plans. Every word tasted like poison, knowing that baby was as real as her love for my son. "Eleanor." Olivia said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Have you thought about retirement? You've worked so hard for so long. Maybe it's time to let the younger generation handle the business pressures. After the honeymoon," Nathan added smoothly, "I'd really love to discuss taking on more responsibility, Mom. Olivia's brother, Andrew, has been so helpful with the legal side," Emma continued. "He really understands estate planning. Your brother's a lawyer. That's wonderful." The lie came easily now. I was learning their game. "Excuse me," I said, standing. "Bathroom." In the hallway, my hands shook as I pulled out my phone, opened the recording app, and tucked it behind books on the shelf near the dining room. I flushed the toilet for effect, washed my hands, and returned with that same hollow smile. "So," I said brightly, "tell me more about the Maldives." 10 minutes later, I excused myself again. In the bathroom, I pulled up the recording app on my tablet. I'd synced the devices earlier. Through the live feed, their voices came through crystal clear. Nathan's voice low and careful. "You think she suspects anything? Please." Emma's laugh was cruel. "She signed everything without reading a word. Your mother's too trusting. Andrew said the documents are airtight. Once we're married, once we're back from the honeymoon, we move fast. My brother knows Eleanor better than she knows herself. 15 years planning every detail." Nathan laughed. Actually laughed. "The old woman has no idea what's coming. She'll be in some assisted living facility while we run her empire." "Our empire," Emma corrected. "We've earned this." "Damn right. After all those times she chose work over me growing up. After every missed game, every forgotten birthday. She built this empire and ignored her own son. Well, now it's mine." "Ours," Emma repeated. "Ours," Nathan agreed. I stood in that bathroom, both hands gripping the sink, listening to my son laugh about destroying me. The son I'd raised alone after Richard died. The son I'd worked 60-hour weeks for, building something to leave him. The son who now saw that legacy as his due my presence as an obstacle. The recording kept running. I kept listening. And I kept planning. Monday morning, I sat across from Lawrence Brennan with evidence that would destroy my son. Lawrence's office occupied the 23rd floor of a downtown tower, floor-to-ceiling windows, framing the Rockies beyond Denver's skyline. I'd scheduled this meeting 3 days ago, telling his assistant only that it was urgent. Now I laid everything across his mahogany desk: the power of attorney documents, the LLC transfer papers, Samuel Rodriguez's investigation report, and my phone with the recording queued up. "Before you play that," Lawrence said carefully, "I need to know if you're prepared for where this leads." "Play it," I said. He pressed play. For the next 47 minutes, we sat in silence while my son's voice filled that office. Nathan and Emma discussing my gullibility, Andrew Thornton's 15-year revenge plot, the assisted living facility, the timeline, everything executed right after the honeymoon. When Nathan's laugh echoed through the speakers, "The old woman has no idea what's coming." Lawrence's jaw went rigid. The recording ended. Silence hung heavy between us. "This isn't just civil fraud," Lawrence finally said, his voice tight. "This is criminal conspiracy wire fraud, forgery, elder exploitation. If we pursue this fully, Eleanor, your son, faces federal charges. Prison time. Years, not months." "I understand. Do you—" He leaned forward. "Because there's no walking this back once we start. No plea deals, no family reconciliation, no second chances. You'll be testifying against your own son in federal court. He chose his path when he called me the old woman and laughed about destroying me." Lawrence studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, here's our strategy." He pulled out a legal pad and started writing. 1. Challenge the documents based on fraudulent inducement. Not incompetency, I wasn't confused or senile. I was deliberately deceived by someone who'd exploited my trust and distracted me with wedding planning and grandchild dreams. 2. File an ethics complaint with the Colorado Bar Association against Andrew Thornton. He'd used privileged information from his employment 15 years ago to engineer a criminal conspiracy against a former employer. That's disbarment territory. 3. Contact the FBI. Wire fraud becomes federal the moment money crosses state lines. Summit Capital Group is based in California. Federal jurisdiction, federal penalties. 4. Emergency injunction freezing Ross family, LLC assets immediately. Stop the sale dead before a single dollar changes hands. 5. Execute a new will today. Everything goes to the Denver Housing Foundation. Nathan gets nothing. Make it ironclad, witness notarized, and completely irrevocable. What about the wedding? Lawrence asked quietly. I'd thought about this all weekend. 150 guests. Family, friends, business partners, people who'd watched Nathan grow up, who'd congratulated me on his engagement. I want everyone to know, I said. Every person in that room needs to witness the truth. I want it public so there's no spinning the story later. No redemption narrative, no family dispute explanation. Eleanor. Lawrence's voice softened. He's still your son. Once this goes public, he stopped being my son when he plotted to have me declared incompetent and locked away. My voice stayed steady. He made his choice. Now I'm making mine. Lawrence nodded slowly. When do you want to do this? Saturday, at the ceremony, before the vows. That afternoon, I texted Nathan, so excited for Saturday's sweetheart. The seating chart looks perfect. He responded within minutes. Can't wait, Mom. You're the best. Tuesday, I texted about the flower arrangements. Wednesday, the menu. Thursday, a joke about hoping for good weather. Each message warm, loving, excited. While Lawrence filed the injunction. While Samuel delivered evidence to FBI Special Agent Jennifer Brooks. While Andrew Thornton's ethics complaint wound through the Bar Association. Friday afternoon, Nathan sent a photo him and Emma at the venue, both grinning. Her hand on her fake belly. His arm around her shoulders. Final walkthrough done tomorrow's gonna be perfect, Mom. I sent back 3 heart emojis, then I reviewed the arrest warrants on my desk. The week passed like that. Each day I built the case. Each night I played the loving mother one last time. Tuesday morning, October 15th, I walked into the FBI's Denver field office. The federal building on Stout Street felt appropriately intimidating, all concrete and glass security checkpoints, the weight of government authority in every corner. Special Agent Jennifer Brooks met me in a conference room on the 3rd floor, her handshake firm, her expression unreadable. I'd brought everything. The power of attorney documents with my forged consent, the Ross family LLC registration showing Nathan as sole managing member, my name conspicuously absent. Samuel Rodriguez's financial investigation revealing $605,000 in combined debt. The preliminary sales agreement to Summit Capital Group, $62 million in assets being sold for $25 million, and the recording. 47 minutes of my son and his conspirators planning my destruction. Agent Brooks listened to all of it. When Nathan's voice said, "The old woman has no idea what's coming," her jaw tightened. "Mrs. Ross," she said when the recording ended, "these are federal charges. Wire fraud conspiracy to commit fraud, elder financial exploitation. If Summit Capital is based outside Colorado, California," I said, "then we have clear interstate commerce. Federal jurisdiction." She closed her notepad. "We're opening an investigation immediately. I'll need you to sign some documents, and I need you to understand once we move forward, there's no stopping this." "I understand." "Your son will likely face prison time." "I know." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "We'll have agents at the wedding venue Saturday, plain clothes. When you give the signal, we'll move." Wednesday morning, October 16th. I sat in Lawrence Brennan's office and signed my new will with 3 witnesses present. Every word felt like a door closing. I, Eleanor Ross, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all previous wills and codicils. The entirety of my estate, valued at approximately $62 million, shall be transferred to the Denver Housing Foundation to establish affordable housing for low-income families. My son, Nathan Ross, is hereby specifically and intentionally disinherited. He shall receive nothing from my estate. My hand didn't shake. Not once. Lawrence witnessed the signature, his face solemn. "This is irrevocable, Eleanor." "Good." Thursday, October 17th. Lawrence filed the formal ethics complaint with the Colorado Bar Association against Andrew Thornton. The complaint was 32 pages long, meticulously detailed, using privileged information from former employment, engineering a criminal conspiracy against a former client, fraudulent legal documents designed to exploit an elderly woman's trust. "They'll investigate," Lawrence told me over the phone. "But even if they move slowly, the FBI won't. You've given them everything they need." Friday, October 18th, Judge Morrison granted the emergency injunction at 2 in the afternoon. Ross Family LLC frozen. All transactions prohibited. All transfers void. The sale to Summit Capital was dead in the water. Nathan had no idea. None of them did. That afternoon I texted him, "So excited for tomorrow, sweetheart. You and Olivia are going to look perfect together." His response came immediately. "Love you, Mom. Can't wait for you to see everything we've planned." 3 heart emojis. 3 heart emojis while his entire world was about to collapse. Friday evening I sat alone in my home office reviewing my checklist. Legal protection complete. FBI ready complete. Evidence compiled complete. Injunction granted complete. New will executed complete. The wedding was tomorrow at 2 o'clock. 150 guests. My son. His pregnant fiancée who wasn't pregnant. The lawyer who'd waited 15 years for revenge. All of them walking into a trap I'd built with the same skills I'd used to build my empire. I'd spent 40 years learning how to construct something from nothing. How to plan, strategize, execute without emotion when business demanded it. How to make hard decisions and live with the consequences. Tomorrow I would use those same skills to take it all back. Outside my window, Denver's lights glittered against the October darkness. Somewhere out there, Nathan was probably celebrating his last night as a free man, dreaming of the fortune he thought he'd stolen. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But I did. Earlier that week, Wednesday afternoon, October 16th, Samuel Rodriguez called with information that shattered what little faith I had left. "Mrs. Ross," he said carefully, "I need to talk to you about Olivia's pregnancy." My heart jumped. "Is the baby all right?" A pause. Too long. When Samuel spoke again, his voice was gentle in that way people use when delivering devastating news. "Mrs. Ross, there is no baby." The world tilted. I gripped the edge of my desk. "What, she's 2 months along. I've seen the ultrasound photos. She let me feel the baby kick last week." That ultrasound photo is from a stock image website. I traced it back to the source. Getty Images purchased 3 months ago using a credit card registered to Andrew Thornton. I couldn't breathe. "I checked medical records through my contacts," Samuel continued. "Olivia Harper hasn't visited any OB/GYN in the Denver metro area, not once. The doctor whose name is on her paperwork, Dr. Marcus Webb. He's a former client of Andrew Thornton's." "Former client," I repeated numbly. "Dr. Webb was disciplined by the Colorado Medical Board 3 years ago for falsifying patient records, lost his hospital privileges. Now he runs a small practice in Aurora, barely staying afloat. The kind of doctor who might be willing to create fake medical documents for the right price." My hand found the photo frame on my desk. Nathan and Olivia at the engagement party, her hand on her flat stomach, both of them glowing with joy. I'd cried happy tears that night. Tears for my first grandchild. Richard's first grandchild. The baby who would carry our family forward. "But she touches her belly," I whispered. "She talks about the baby kicking. She looks radiant. It's a performance, Mrs. Ross, and it's a damn good one." I thought of every conversation about nursery colors, every discussion about baby names, Olivia's hand constantly resting on her stomach in that protective maternal gesture, the way she'd glow when talking about feeling the baby move. All of it. Lies. Based on text messages I recovered, Samuel said, "I believe the plan was this. After the honeymoon, she stages a miscarriage. You're devastated, grieving, distracted. You don't ask questions while they liquidate your assets. By the time you realize what's happening, everything's gone." The cruelty of it took my breath away. They'd weaponized my grief over Richard never meeting his grandchild. They'd manipulated my deepest maternal hopes, twisted them into a tool for theft. Does Nathan know it's fake? My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. Another pause. This one felt like falling. There are text messages between him and Olivia referencing the baby story and how well it's working. I'm sorry, Mrs. Ross, he knows. He knows. My son knows there's no baby. My son helped plan this elaborate deception. My son watched me cry happy tears over a grandchild that didn't exist and said nothing. Mrs. Ross, you still there? I'm here. I'm sorry. I know this isn't send me everything. The stock photo source, the doctor's information, the text messages. I want every piece of evidence. I'll email it within the hour. I hung up and stared at the photo on my desk. Nathan, at 5 years old, holding my hand, his gap-toothed smile bright with innocence. He'd been so small then, so trusting. After Richard died, it had been just the two of us against the world. When had that little boy turned into this? Or had I created this monster myself? Had my 60-hour work weeks and missed Little League games and chosen business trips over birthday parties built? The resentment that led him here. Had I built my empire and destroyed my son in the process? The questions burned, but they didn't change what came next. Saturday was still 3 days away. The next morning, Thursday, October 17th, Samuel called again. Mrs. Ross, I found something else about Nathan. I gripped the armrest of my chair. I audited your company's financial records. Nathan's been stealing from you for 2 years. Dow, what no? The conspiracy only started in August. The conspiracy to take everything started in August, Samuel said gently. But the theft started in 2022, 2 years ago. While I'd been teaching him the business, trusting him with company accounts, proud my son wanted to learn. I found discrepancies going back 24 months. Small amounts at first, probably testing to see if you'd notice. 3,000 here, 5,000 there, then bigger, 15,000, 25. By this year, 40,000 at a time. $200,000. My son had stolen $200,000 from me. He was good at covering his tracks, Samuel continued. Fake expense reports, phantom vendors burying transfers in legitimate transactions. He learned your systems and used them against you. I thought of every family dinner over the past 2 years, every hug, every I love you, Mom. Nathan sitting across from me smiling while knowing he'd stolen from me that very morning. 730 days, 2 full years of theft. There's more. He has a serious gambling problem, records going back 3 years, online poker sports betting Blackhawk casinos. He was losing faster than he could steal. That $130,000 in loans, that's what's left after burning through $200,000 of your money. My son was a gambler, an addict, a thief. Emma Thornton discovered Nathan's embezzlement in January, Samuel said. I found text messages. She didn't report him. She blackmailed him. Help us take everything or I'll tell your mother about the gambling and theft. She gave him a choice, Eleanor, and he chose conspiracy. Nathan could have come to me, could have confessed, could have asked for help with his addiction. Instead, he'd chosen to destroy me. Is this my fault? The words escaped before I could stop them. Did I work too much? Was I a terrible mother? Samuel was quiet for a moment. Addiction is a disease, but theft is a choice. Conspiracy is a choice. At every step, Nathan chose the path that hurt you most. That's on him, not you. I stared out my window at the Denver skyline Richard and I had conquered 40 years ago, building by building, sacrifice by sacrifice, believing we were creating something for our family, and Nathan had stolen from it for 2 years while smiling at me across the dinner table. Tomorrow was the wedding. Nathan thought he was clever, thought his plans were airtight, thought his fake pregnancy and conspiracy were foolproof. He had no idea I knew about the phantom baby. No idea I knew about the gambling and theft. No idea the FBI was waiting. No idea his entire world was about to collapse in front of 150 witnesses. Tomorrow the world would see exactly what my son had become. And I would make sure everyone knew. 2 years of theft, a fake pregnancy, a 15-year revenge plot. My son chose conspiracy over confession. If you're still with me through this painful journey, comment 1 below. I need to know you're here. Quick note, this story blends creative elements with real lessons. If that's not for you, feel free to exit now. Otherwise, stay with me for what happens next. Saturday morning, October 19th. I stood before the mirror in my bedroom, adjusting the navy blue dress I'd chosen for my son's wedding. Navy, the color of strength, of formality, of control. I opened my safe and removed Richard's wedding band, the one I'd kept for 8 years since his death. I slipped it into my jacket pocket, a reminder of what family was supposed to mean. On my dresser sat 3 photos. Nathan at 5, gap-toothed and grinning. Nathan at 15, sullen teenager with Richard's eyes. Nathan at 25, his arm around my shoulders at his college graduation, both of us smiling. What would you say, Richard? I whispered to his memory, that I'm too harsh, that I should forgive our son. But I knew what Richard would say. He'd say integrity mattered, that you couldn't excuse betrayal just because you loved the betrayer. That values meant nothing if you abandoned them when they became inconvenient. I drove to Red Rocks Country Club in Morrison, 20 minutes west of Denver. October in Colorado painted the world gold aspen leaves, brilliant against evergreens, the Rocky Mountains rising like ancient sentinels behind the venue. It was achingly beautiful. The perfect day for a wedding. 150 guests milled about the grounds, colleagues from 40 years in real estate, friends who'd watched Nathan grow up, distant relatives who'd flown in from across the country. Such a proud day for you, Eleanor. That penthouse was such a generous gift. Your son's so lucky to have you. I smiled, nodded, thanked them. Every word tasted like ash. Through the crowd, I spotted Andrew Thornton in an expensive suit, his smile victorious. Our eyes met across the lawn. He raised his champagne glass slightly, a private toast to what he thought was his impending triumph. I nodded politely and turned away. Through a window, I glimpsed Olivia in her bridal suite. White dress, veil, her hand resting on her fake pregnancy, the performance so perfect even now. I wondered if she'd practiced that gesture in front of a mirror, if she'd studied pregnant women to get the movements just right. Nathan found me near the ceremony space. Mom. He hugged me tight. Thank you for everything. The penthouse, your support, being here. I know I don't say this enough, but I love you. I looked at his face, searched for guilt, for hesitation, for some trace of the little boy he'd been, found nothing but excitement, triumph, the expression of a man who thought he'd gotten away with everything. You're my son, Nathan, I said. I'd do anything for you. It was the last honest thing I would say to him. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 o'clock. I took my seat in the front row, the mother of the groom, right where tradition dictated. Around me, guests settled into white folding chairs. The string quartet began tuning their instruments. Flowers perfumed the autumn air. Through the crowd, I caught Officer Ryan Burke's eye. He was positioned near the exit plain clothes, looking like just another guest. He gave me the slightest nod. Agent Jennifer Brooks stood near the back, her hand resting casually near her jacket. 2 more agents I'd been shown photos of flanked the sides. Everything was in place. The ceremony would begin at 3. I would watch my son marry the woman who'd deceived us all. And I would wait. 3 o'clock. The string quartet shifted into Pachelbel's canon, and the ceremony began. The outdoor venue was picture perfect. White chairs arranged in neat rows facing a flower-draped arch. The Rocky Mountains rising behind like silent judges. Autumn sunlight filtering through golden aspens. 150 guests turned to watch the processional. Olivia appeared at the end of the aisle in white lace, her veil floating in the October breeze. Her hand rested prominently on her belly that practiced maternal gestures she'd perfected over months of deception. Guests whispered to each other, smiling, "The bride's pregnant. How wonderful! Oh, what a blessing!" They're starting a family right away. I sat in the front row, mother of the groom, exactly where tradition dictated. Richard's absence was a hole beside me. He should have been here. Should have walked Nathan down the aisle in some modern variation. Should have been proud. Instead, Nathan walked alone to the arch where the officiant waited. Olivia reached him. They turned to face each other, hands clasped, both of them glowing. The perfect couple. The beautiful lie. The officiant began. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Nathan and Olivia in holy matrimony. Holy. The word rang hollow. Nathan, do you take Olivia to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice carried across the lawn, strong and certain. Do you promise to love her, honor her, provide for her, and for the child you're bringing into this world? I do. Nathan's eyes glistened. Such a good performance. I almost believed it myself. Olivia, do you take Nathan to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Her voice was soft, trembling with what everyone would interpret as joy. Do you promise to stand by him, to love his family as your own? She's planning to destroy my family, I thought, but I kept my face neutral. I do, Olivia said, squeezing Nathan's hands. The ring exchange, gold bands symbolizing eternal promises built on lies. Nathan slipped the ring onto Olivia's finger with such tenderness. She did the same for him, her fake pregnancy bump pressing against him as she reached up. By the power vested in me by the state of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Nathan lifted Olivia's veil and kissed her. The guests erupted in applause. I clapped mechanically, the sound distant in my own ears. Husband and wife, legally bound. It didn't matter anymore. What was coming would shatter that bond before their honeymoon luggage was even packed. I glanced back 3 rows. Andrew Thornton sat there in his expensive suit, his smile triumphant. He raised his champagne glass slightly when he caught my eye, as if toasting his victory. They thought they'd won. Nathan and Olivia walked back down the aisle together, his arm around her waist, both of them beaming. Guests stood applauding, throwing flower petals. The cocktail hour would begin at 4, dinner at 6, toasts at 7. I had planned my speech for 7:30. Officer Ryan Burke moved to his position near the main entrance, exactly where I'd arranged. Agent Brooks adjusted her stance near the side exit. The other agents melted into the crowd of guests, invisible and ready. Nathan laughed with his groomsman, relief evident on his face. The ceremony had gone perfectly. Everything was proceeding according to his plan. He had no idea that every step was proceeding according to mine. Dinner began at 6 o'clock. 150 guests settled into their seats as I stood and walked to the microphone. Nathan raised his champagne glass, smiling, expecting a traditional toast. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, I want to talk about trust, family, and betrayal. Nathan's smile flickered. 10 days ago, I received a warning. Instead of running, I investigated. I pressed play on my phone. Nathan's voice filled the reception hall. The old woman has no idea what's coming. She signs everything without reading. She'll be in assisted living while we run her empire. Olivia's voice. Our empire. We've earned this. The room erupted. Nathan's face drained of color. Olivia's hand fell from her fake belly. Sit down, Nathan. I held up documents. Ross Family LLC registered in August. Nathan as sole managing member. My name nowhere on the filing. This LLC was created to transfer my $62 million portfolio to Summit Capital for $25 million, a $37 million loss. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Why? Because they're drowning in debt. Olivia owes $475,000. Nathan owes $130,000. They needed cash desperately. Mom, this is... Nathan tried to speak. I'm not finished. Olivia Harper's legal name until 2019 was Emma Thornton, sister of Andrew Thornton. I gestured to row 3. The lawyer I fired 15 years ago for fraud. This is a revenge plot. Emma changed her identity and hunted my son for 3 years. The crowd erupted in chaos. And here's where it gets truly evil. Tell them about the baby Olivia. She went white. There is no baby. The ultrasound was a stock photo from Getty Images. The doctor has disgraced a former client of Andrew's. The pregnancy is as fake as her name. After the honeymoon, she planned to stage a miscarriage. I'd be devastated, distracted by grief while they liquidated everything. Women in the audience gasped. One began crying. And Nathan, tell them about the $200,000 you stole from my company over 2 years. The gambling. Every "I love you" was manipulation. I projected the bank records' casino logs on the screen. When Emma discovered Nathan's theft in January, she blackmailed him. Help us take everything or she'd expose him. He chose conspiracy. Please, Mom. I'm sorry. Nathan was crying. I executed a new will Wednesday. My entire estate goes to the Denver Housing Foundation. Nathan receives nothing. Ross Family, LLC is frozen. The sale is void. I looked at Officer Burke. Additionally, I've worked with the FBI all week. Agent Brooks stepped forward, badge visible. Andrew Thornton, you're under arrest for wire fraud and conspiracy. Burke caught Andrew at the door. Handcuffs clicked. Emma Thornton, you're under arrest for conspiracy and identity fraud. An agent approached Emma in her wedding dress. Nathan Ross, you're under arrest for embezzlement and wire fraud. Mom, please, I'm still your son. I looked at the little boy with the gap-toothed smile who'd become this stranger. My son died 2 years ago when he started stealing from me. I don't know who you are anymore. I set down the microphone and walked toward the exit. Behind me, chaos erupted. Crying, shouting police radios, 150 witnesses to the destruction of my family. I stepped outside into the October evening. The mountains stood silent against the darkening sky. The wedding was over. So was my family. I drove home alone Saturday night while my son sat in a police interrogation room. The Denver streets passed in a blur, familiar landmarks suddenly foreign. The restaurant where we'd celebrated Nathan's college acceptance. The park where I'd taught him to ride a bike. The coffee shop where we'd met for breakfast just 3 weeks ago before I knew what he was. My phone rang. William Sterling. Eleanor. I heard what happened. Are you all right? I'm fine. The lie came automatically. That took courage. What you did today. It took necessity. I turned onto my street. Thank you, William, for the warning, for giving me time to prepare. I'm here if you need anything. We'd reconnected after 15 years apart after I'd chosen Nathan over our business partnership. Now William was still here and Nathan was gone. The irony wasn't lost on me. My house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I'd left it 12 hours ago to attend my son's wedding. I was returning to something else entirely, an empty monument to choices I couldn't take back. I walked through rooms that suddenly felt too large. The kitchen where Nathan had brought me fraudulent documents while discussing wedding menus. The office where I'd discovered his theft. The living room where we'd celebrated his engagement to a woman who'd hunted him for revenge. My feet carried me upstairs to Nathan's childhood bedroom. I'd kept it exactly as he'd left it when he moved out at 22, a shrine to someone who maybe never existed at all. Baseball trophies on the shelf, artwork from elementary school still tacked to the wall. I love you, Mom, spelled out in crayon and glitter, his old bed with the navy comforter, posters of bands he'd loved as a teenager. I sat on the bed and picked up the photo on his nightstand. Nathan at 5 holding my hand at the zoo ice cream on his face, pure joy in his eyes. When had that little boy transformed into the man who'd stolen from me? Or had he always been capable of it? And I just refused to see. I thought of all the Little League games Richard had begged me to attend. Come on, Eleanor, he's only young once. Next week, when this deal closes, all the school plays I'd missed, the science fairs, the parent-teacher conferences where Richard went alone because I was in meetings on calls building an empire. Had my absence created the monster, my son became number 1. I stopped that thought before it could take root. Addiction might be a disease, but theft was a choice. Conspiracy was a choice. At every turn, Nathan had chosen the path that hurt me most. That was on him. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I knew who it was before I even looked. Mom, please. Can we talk? I can explain everything." I stared at the message for a long time, sitting in my son's childhood room surrounded by ghosts of who he used to be or who he pretended to be. The gap-toothed smile in the photo, the crayon artwork declaring love, the trophies I'd been too busy to watch him earn. Maybe someday I'd respond to that text. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear explanations, excuses, apologies. Not today, not soon, maybe never. I turned off my phone and sat in the darkness alone. 7 o'clock Sunday morning. I drove to the penthouse in Cherry Creek one last time. The building rose against the dawn sky, glass and steel catching the first light of day. I'd signed the papers 9 days ago, held these keys in my pocket while my world collapsed. A gift for my son that would never be given. A symbol of everything I'd believed about family that turned out to be a lie. I used my key to unlock the door. The penthouse stood empty just as I'd left it. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Front Range mountains painted gold and pink by sunrise. It was achingly beautiful. The view Richard and I had dreamed about when we first arrived in Denver with nothing but hope and his life insurance money. I walked to the center of the living room and stood there, keys heavy in my palm. $1.2 million in glass and granite and breathtaking views. Worth nothing now. A monument to misplaced trust. I protected what we built, I whispered to Richard's ghost, but I lost our son in the process. Would he have made different choices? Would he have found a way to save Nathan and the empire both? Or would he have done exactly what I did, chosen? Justice over mercy, consequences over forgiveness I'd never know. 10 miles away, Nathan sat in a jail cell awaiting arraignment. Was he truly sorry? Or just sorry he'd been caught? Did he lie awake thinking about the mother he'd betrayed, or was he calculating his legal defense, planning his next manipulation? My phone buzzed. Another text from his number. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I made terrible mistakes. I need help. Please." I stared at the words. The please repeated like a prayer, like if he said it enough times I'd break. I'd rush to the jail post his bail hire the best lawyers choose my son over justice the way mothers are supposed to. I deleted the message. The love a mother feels doesn't disappear, not even when it should. Somewhere deep inside, I still loved the 5-year-old with ice cream on his face, the teenager who'd cried at his father's funeral, the young man who'd asked to learn the family business. But that person either never existed or died long ago, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Trust once shattered doesn't rebuild. How could I ever look at Nathan again without seeing the lies, without remembering the fake pregnancy weaponizing my grief, without hearing his voice on that recording, calling me the old woman? While plotting my destruction, I turned back to the windows to the city Richard and I had conquered, building by building, sacrifice by sacrifice. 40 years of work protected, justice served. Nathan, Andrew, and Emma all facing federal charges. My empire saved, but at what cost? I'd won. My assets were secure. My betrayers arrested, my legacy preserved for the Denver Housing Foundation instead of thieves and conspirators. So why did victory feel so much like devastation? I walked to the kitchen and set the keys on the marble counter, a symbolic gesture, the gift abandoned. The future I'd imagined for my son left behind in an empty penthouse with $1 million view. I stepped into the hallway and locked the door behind me, leaving the penthouse as empty as my heart. 6 months after the wedding that never finished, I stood in a Denver courtroom to hear the sentences. The federal trial had been swift. The evidence was overwhelming. The recording the document Samuel's investigation FBI testimony. Nathan, Andrew, and Emma had all taken plea deals rather than face a jury. Now came the consequences. Nathan looked different, thinner, older than his 29 years. His eyes held something that might have been remorse or might have been self-pity. I couldn't tell anymore. He tried to catch my eye as they led him in. I looked away. Judge Morrison read the sentences with no emotion, just the weight of federal law. Nathan Ross, 5 years in federal prison for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The court notes as an aggravating factor that your victim was your own mother. You will also complete mandatory gambling addiction treatment during your incarceration. 5 years. My son would be 34 when he got out, if he served the full term, if he survived it. Andrew Thornton, 12 years in federal prison for masterminding this conspiracy for wire fraud for exploiting privileged information from former employment. You are permanently disbarred from practicing law in any jurisdiction. Andrew's face remained blank. 12 years. He'd be 52 when released. His revenge had cost him everything. Olivia Harper, also known as Emma Thornton, 8 years in federal prison for conspiracy identity fraud, wire fraud. The court finds your fake pregnancy scheme particularly unconscionable, exploiting a grandmother's natural love for calculated financial gain. Emma still legally misses. Nathan Ross, though annulment papers were filed, stared at the floor. 8 years for hunting my son, for weaponizing hope, for turning love into a tool of theft. Dr. Marcus Webb. 3 years in federal prison for creating fraudulent medical documents. Your medical license is permanently revoked. The doctor who'd helped fake a pregnancy for money. 3 years. As they led Nathan away in handcuffs, he turned back one last time. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." I nodded once. Acknowledgement. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. William Sterling waited for me outside the courtroom, his presence steady in the chaos. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I won," I said. The words felt hollow. Justice was served. The sentences are fair. Everything worked out exactly as it should have. Justice and peace are two different things, Eleanor. I looked at him, this man I'd pushed away 15 years ago, who'd warned me when he didn't have to, who'd stood by me through the aftermath. "I know," I whispered. We walked out of the courthouse together into April sunshine. Denver was blooming spring flowers emerging the city, moving forward as it always did. Life continued whether you were ready or not. Nathan would serve 5 years, Andrew 12, Emma 8. The legal chapter was closed. The empire was protected. The betrayers were punished. But the wound still bled. I'd won justice. I'd protected everything Richard and I built. I'd ensured that theft and betrayal faced consequences. But every night I ate dinner alone in a house that felt too big, surrounded by photos of a son who either never existed or died long before that wedding day. I'd won everything, except what mattered most. They say time heals all wounds. At 70 years old, I know that's not quite true. Time doesn't heal. It just teaches you how to live with the scars. It's been 6 months since the sentencing. I still live in the house Richard and I bought 40 years ago, the one where we raised Nathan, where ordinary Tuesdays felt like nothing special until they were gone. I hired professional management to run the business. I still own it, but the 60-hour weeks are over. That chapter is closed. Once a month, I meet William Sterling for coffee at Corvus in Cherry Creek, the same place where he overheard the conspiracy that saved everything. We sit at that same table and talk about second chances, redemption, and whether people can truly change. Last month, I gave William the penthouse, the one I'd bought for Nathan, the gift that was never given. "You gave me truth when my own son gave me lies," I told him. "This is yours now," William cried. At 68 years old, 6 years sober from cocaine, he cried in that coffee shop like a child. Together, we're starting the Richard Ross Second Chance program. Mentorship for young people struggling with addiction debt, the kind of desperation that makes theft seem like the only option. We're teaching business ethics, financial literacy, how to ask for help before you're drowning. Maybe we'll save someone. Maybe we'll prevent another family from shattering the way mine did. I think about Nathan every day. He's in federal prison in Florence, Colorado, serving his 5 years. He writes once a month. I read every letter. I just don't respond. Not yet. Maybe someday. His letters are full of apologies and therapy insights and promises to be better. I want to believe them. The mother in me wants desperately to believe my son has found redemption in that cell, that he's truly sorry. But trust once broken doesn't rebuild easily. Maybe it never rebuilds at all. Here's what I've learned. What I wish I could tell my younger self. What I want to tell anyone listening to this story: don't let pride cost you your family. I was so proud of my empire, so focused on building something that would last, that I forgot to build a relationship with my son. Nathan didn't need another property or a penthouse. He needed his mother at his baseball games, his graduations, his ordinary moments. He needed me present, not just successful. I built an empire and lost my son. That's on both of us, but I have to own my part. When someone you love betrays you, protect yourself. Absolutely protect yourself. Don't let guilt or family obligation make you a victim. I did the right thing, gathering evidence, calling the FBI, ensuring consequences for fraud and conspiracy. But here's the question I wrestle with every night. 10 years from now, what will I regret more, that I let them get away with it, or that I lost my son forever? I chose justice. I'd make the same choice again, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. If you're listening to this and you have children, hug them tonight, even if they don't deserve it. Especially if they don't deserve it. Tell them you love them. Be present in their lives. Don't wait until success or retirement or next year to build the relationship that matters most. Don't build an empire and forget to build a family. I protected everything Richard and I created over 40 years. I ensured our legacy would help families through the Denver Housing Foundation. I made sure betrayal faced consequences, but I eat dinner alone every night, and no amount of justice changes that. My name is Eleanor Ross. This is my story. These are my scars. Learn from them. Do better than I did. Hug your children tonight, before it's too late. Before you're 70 years old with a $62 million empire and nobody to share it with. Before you win everything except what matters most. My name is Eleanor Ross, and this is what family drama stories teach at 70 years old. Don't be like me. Don't sacrifice children for success. God gave us family to inherit love, not empires. I chose boardrooms over baseball games. When Nathan needed his mother, I gave business lessons instead of presents. These grandma stories online have happy endings. Mine doesn't. God doesn't measure success in dollars, but in relationships, in moments we can't recover in children, lost chasing fortune. If you're working 60-hour weeks thinking, next year, stop. God calls you to build family, not empires. Nathan didn't need my penthouse. He needed me. When betrayal comes in family drama stories, protect yourself. But ask God for wisdom, balancing justice with mercy. I chose justice. Every night alone, I wonder if winning was worth everything. The most powerful grandma stories aren't about courtrooms. They're bedtime stories. Sunday dinners, answered calls. That's where family drama stories should end, in love, not litigation. These grandma stories teach what matters. Don't wait until 70 with $62 million and nobody to share it. My son is in prison. My family destroyed. No justice heals that. Learn from my scars. Do better. Thank you for staying until the end. If this moved you, comment "listening" below. Note this story contains dramatized elements for reflection. If it doesn't resonate, explore content that speaks to you. But if it touched your heart, share it with someone who needs this message and subscribe to continue these conversations together.